height of a very lucrative career in the corporate world as a venture capitalist. He walked away. He made a life-changing decision. And today he is widely known as a venture capitalist for good causes.
The most beautiful word ever written at any time, in any country, in any language, came from India, from the Upanishads 3,000 years ago. Ahimsa, non-violence to any living being. It says we reject violence wherever and whenever it arises, in our streets, in our homes, in our thoughts, in our hearts, and at our dining tables. And it's not just about animal rights. It really is about human wrongs. I used to be a merchant banker,
Yes.
or you'd call them investment bankers, specializing in corporate finance. And on my 40th birthday, I'd seen so much cruelty, suffering, corruption throughout all my travels. I decided to give it all away. I was the Vice-President of Citibank, and I decided to take all the money I'd ever made and give it away with warm hands and die broke. And so far, we're right on budget. It was largely because of the type of organization Sea Shepherd is. It's an organization that really protects marine animals. And, you know, people go around to all our projects on land and they see the people who work there, they touch the buildings, and it's very palpable. But out in the ocean, out of sight is out of mind. You don't see anything. But the egregious cruelty and destruction that is out there is invisible. And then Sea Shepherd came to town from the United States. They had one ship, small 650-ton ship called the Fowley Mowat, and they arrived at Melbourne, and they were heading off to Antarctica to confront the Japanese poaching whaling fleet. For many years, have been ramming the Japanese ships, crashing into them to get them out of Antarctica. Well, I met them that night, and I went to a little presentation that they did, and only 20 people turned up, and half of them were crew. Well, I saw what they were doing, and I just got up and said, look, I really like what you're doing. Tonight, I'll give you, this is 15 years ago, I'll give you a present of $50,000. I'll give you free accommodation in our offices. We had a huge building called Kindness House. And my wife and I will run Sea Shepherd in Australia for you for a couple of years until you could find somebody to do it properly. And in the last 3 years, we've arrested 54 ships from China and from the European Union, extracting tens of millions of euros in fines and protecting the most vulnerable artisanal fishers, largely in Africa. Well, many years ago, I was, as I say, a merchant banker. And in the course of my profession, I went out to see a client who was a conglomerate, had interests in many different industries. And one of the industries in which they were active turned out to be a slaughterhouse. Now, one must remember that in those days, I was a meat eater. My favorite food was filet mignon and lobster, a fact for which I'm so profoundly ashamed today. Well, what I saw that day in that slaughterhouse absolutely terrified me. It shook me up, and I was a big, tough, sports-loving, macho kind of guy, but it affected me profoundly, and I became a vegetarian on the spot. But I didn't know enough to talk or think intelligently about the dairy industry. Everything we think we know about the meat and dairy industry is a preposterous lie. So when I came back to Australia, I studied the dairy industry, and I discovered that it was the most cruel, disgusting, vile gulag of despair. Meat is milk in liquid form. You see, today the world is crying out for only two things: leadership and the truth. So today we simply tell the truth. I heard the screams of my dying father as his body was ravaged by the many cancers that killed him. And I realized I'd heard those screams before. In the slaughterhouse, on the cattle ships to the Middle East, and a dying mother whale as a harpoon explodes in her brain as she calls out to her calf. That when we suffer as equals. And in their capacity to suffer, a dog is a pig, is a bear, is a boy.